Welcome to another great Car Basic video. This is March 2023 and I'm talking about PIC AS capability. Please like this video and subscribe. I need subscriptions. Right, let's get into the video itself. So, Great Car Basic supports the PIC AS XC8 toolchain. We have uploaded that to our own forum on SourceForge, and the link is shown below. But I'm going to peel back what PIC-AS is and why we use it. So, they recently released a new tool for their PIC and AVR microcontrollers. It's a assembler linker tool. That tool is part of the XC8 suite, and it's a replacement for the decades-old MPASM assembler linker. This is commonly known as PIC-AS. So PIC-AS replaces MPASM, but it's not as simple as that. Why do we need Great Car Basic to support PIC-AS? It's a great teaching aid. You can actually walk code in PIC-AS a lot easier than you can in MPASM. So therefore, for teaching, it's quite good. For debugging, it's very good. You can see the code being walked through the simulation of the IDEs, and you can actually use PIC-Kit 4 to walk that code. You get support for PIC-AS in terms of the assembler generated from Microchip. However, the big gotchas are quite simple, is that MPASM doesn't support new chips and it works with only well, it just doesn't support new chips. And that's a bit of a constraint, where PIC-AS only requires a 64-bit operating system. So you get a bit of a catch-22. But let's look at that in detail. Because I want to compare on this table GCASM, is the second column, MPASM, and PIC-AS. Again, it's a series of criteria. Sorry about that. And that criteria is really what operating system it supports, the scope of the MCU or the microcontrollers, the type of installation required, tech support, integration into the GC Basic IDEs, and MPLAB integration. Now, I'm only talking about MPLAB X because you can't run PIC-AS on older versions of MPLAB. So let's go through. Operating system. GCASM, which is part of Great Car Basic, will run on either 32-bit or 64-bit. And so will MPASM. So you can take a file and you can take a .asm file and it will work on 32-bit and 64 bits. Because it's a 32-bit application, it will work on 64-bit. PIC-AS requires a 64-bit native operating system. Bit of a constraint. In terms of the scope of the MCU supported, GCASM, which is the internal in-memory assembler linker, supports PICs, AVRs, and LGTs, whereas MPASM only supports legacy chips. And those legacy chips are chips introduced since 2021. Anything before 2021 is probably supported by MPASM, but most of the new chips, well, all of the new chips just aren't supported by MPASM. And they include all the Q series, 18F Q series, 18F K series, PIC 16Fs that are coming on board, like the 16F 171XX, the 180XX, and the PIC 16F or 181XX. So you've got a whole series that are not supported by MPASM, whereas PIC-AS supports all those, and it also supports AVR. I'm calling them modern chips. However, the scope of that do not overlap very slightly in terms of those PICs. So PIC-AS does support some of the older legacy chips, but not all of them. So you're in a catch-22. The only thing that supports all of them is actually GCASM, okay? So you've got MPASM supporting up to a particular date, which I believe, by my estimation, is January 2021, and PIC-AS goes back in time to support a number of other chips. And you just have to look in the supported list because that's constantly changing for PIC-AS. But I don't think they're going to go back to the old legacy chips. Let's talk about installation. So GCASM is part of installing GreatCloud Basic. There is no additional installation required. For MPASM, you need to install the MPASM installer. That is also up on SourceForge, and I've done a special compilation of the latest version so that you don't have to go hunting around for it. And in terms of PIC-AS, you have to install the XC8 installer. You do not have to install MPLabX to get PIC-AS support. It's a standalone installer. Yes, you get it when you install MPLabX, but you don't need to install it because it's a standalone executable. In terms of tech support, you want support for GCASM, contact the GC Basic team on the forum. MPASM is no longer supported. You contact Microchip, and I've got great support from Microchip personally in terms of my work, and they will not touch MPASM. In terms of tech support for PIC-AS, it's pretty good. PIC-AS is still new to most people in support within Microchip support, but you get support from Microchip, so you can escalate things. Now I'm talking PIC-AS 2.41. I am aware of a new version of PIC-AS coming out, and that will continually improve as they get more feedback, because I found a few bugs the other week. Okay. All right, let's talk about integration. So we're going to start with the GC Basic IDEs. It's inbuilt. GCASM, you don't have to do anything. You just click on it and you get a hex file. In terms of MPASM, you have to go into the programmer preferences and select MPASM as your tool, and the same with PIC-AS. So it's integrated, but you do need to do these separate installers to make it work. Okay. In terms of integration, with MPLabX, it's quite interesting. So if you're using GCASM, there is nothing you can take through into MPLabX. You can take the hex file and you can create an inbuilt project, a pre-built project, and you can actually walk that hex in terms of the debugger and simulator, and you can see those changes occurring. Quite simple. Create an inbuilt project, suck in that hex file, and walk the code. It's very simple. MPASM is no longer supported by PLabX, so you can't take a .asm file and compile it. It won't do it because it's not supported. And then if you take a PIC-AS.s file that's created by GreatCloud Basic, you can actually do a lot more with it. You can actually take a .s file that's been produced. You can then use it for programming inside of MPLabX. You can see the code changing in the simulator, and you can use the debugger with PIC-Kit 4. And potentially, we are actually implementing debugger in PIC-Kit 3 and PIC-Kit 2s. So this table will help you select. My general advice is GCASM. Be quite frank, it is the simplest. It just works. If you want to do some debugging and you want to walk the code, then you need to use PIC-AS, produce a .s file, create a project inside of MPLabX, and then you'll get full support. And then you just keep recompiling it back in GreatCloud Basic, and you can then walk that .s file. Because you just keep recompiling it in GreatCloud Basic, it produces a new .s file, and then you can just recompile that in MPLabX. So you don't have to use MPLabX as your development language. It's very simple. So that table tells you everything that you need to know about PIC-AS. So let's just recap. GreatCloud Basic is an open source compiler, supports PIC-AS. And how does it do that? We'll just recap this. This diagram helps here. We take your source code and we pre-process it and we pull in the libraries. It goes through into a code translator, which is an in-memory model of the combined source code and libraries. It goes through the assembler and generates a .s file. It creates it here as a .s file. You can then push that through to the linker, and that linker toolchain is obviously PIC-AS, and then it will produce you a hex file. As this box indicates in red that MPLabX is outside of this process because the linker here is the PIC-AS. And as you've just seen from the previous table, that linker could be MPASM, and in fact, it could be GCASM as well. Sorry, GPASM. So that's what I wanted to share. This table, the differences between these different linker and tool chains. Enjoy.